Well, everybody. How you doing?
Three holes in the ground.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny. You were trying to get my attention kind of backstage there, and I was too busy doing posts and trying to be
Oh yeah,
important.
yeah. No, yeah. I was gonna about to take my shirt off. I figured that might get your attention.
It would probably get my attention for a second, and then we'd have to go live, and I'd have to ask you all about it. But
Right, right,
neither here
right.
nor there. How you doing, Sean? How you doing, bud?
Oh, I'm excellent. I'm excellent. What
You
a
doing
great
good?
day. A
Yeah.
very good day. Yeah, very good day. Actually, got a lot of the stuff done, and now we're here with first episode. So
Yeah. This is exciting. What we're doing with this kind of segment of Drum Geek. And you brought it
mhm,
up. You brought it up a while ago. Kind of regale
yeah,
me on how that conversation happened.
yeah. So I was kind of doing that really kind of cool guy, but sort of that douchey cool guy who has a vinyl record collection. I'm that guy.
There's a fine line. There's a fine
I'm
line
that
between
guy.
those two. Yeah.
And enjoys good like whiskey or bourbon, and not that that's a douchey thing, but sometimes that can be a little bit construed as kind of like elitist. But I was sitting there enjoying my good bourbon
I,
and
I
my
just moved to wine country, just in case you're wondering, and I don't
yeah.
drink wine, so yeah, I hear you. Go
Oh,
ahead.
you
Sorry.
poor guy. And I was listening to vinyl. I had invested in a really decent turntable, and I was just kind of looking over the notes of all the vinyl that I kind of really enjoy. And I noticed, especially on like newer vinyl, there are no liner notes, or
Mm,
at least in the sort of, I guess you could say, the more economically priced vinyl. If you
sure.
buy like vinyl from the artist, generally there's something there.
Yeah.
But but just overall, and no one really buys CDs anymore. Cassettes maybe are coming back, I guess, but you just kind of don't get liner notes on streaming, and I'm a big fan of streaming too. But and I just thought it'd be really cool is to have a vodcast or podcast based on the liner notes of an album, and
Yeah.
that could be an episode about the history of the album, how the drummer recollects the album, and the second part of that too was it's kind of like as a drummer and people who are fans of drum sites, we do our best to try and keep everything fresh, and you do have to cycle through a lot of sort of the similar questions, right? Like we've talked about, this is why we try and on our vodcast when we interview drummers, we kind of try and ask questions that haven't been asked, because after a while it's just like the Dom Famileros, the Mitch Dorges, the
Yeah.
Billy Cobhams of the world have answered those questions 100 times, and it's just like you
Yeah.
know so
They need to be zhuzhed up, is
yeah, so
what I always say.
I
Yeah.
just thought this was maybe another way to kind of look at the world of drums from another perspective,
Yeah.
and that it's a new conversation that could be had with
Agree.
kind of an old school spin, because I mean not many people care about the liner notes anymore. I dare say if you ask the average 15-year-old like who is the drummer on Billie Eilish's
Correct.
album, they're going to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, two schools of thought on that is that back when I was doing a lot more retail sales in drum departments,
Mhm.
whenever whenever a kid would come in and you're trying to inspire them to get into drumming, that's the number one question I ask is, who's your favorite drummer? Who are you listening to?
Right.
And majority of the time, they didn't have an answer. So I would
Yeah.
say, oh, you like Billy Talent. Awesome. Who's the drummer for that? And then we would go down the rabbit hole of having to search
Yep.
on Google to find that answer.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right that a lot of the time it would be very easy back in the day. Oh my goodness. I'm saying back in the day to actually just open up the CD and see who the hell
Mhm.
played on it, who
Yep.
who produced it, who engineered it, what recording studios were they at, who's a
Mhm.
special thanks.
Mhm.
Like there's something to be said about the people, but
Mhm.
also um and it plays, I think, a very important role tonight. The artwork
Mhm.
of liner notes
Yep.
is uber important and valuable to the marketing of that band.
Well, and I think too, it's like this grand, for me, it's the grand package of like, especially the fact that my wife and I have been recording an album and been
Yeah.
doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and you really just kind of hope that the whole package is respected. Like there's so much that goes into it, right? Like you don't realize until you do an album, just like even just the mix down phase, the mastering phase, like never mind like coming up with the songs and deciding which songs and in the arrangement section and then the vocal arrangements and then, you know, and then like sending it to someone who doesn't have rose colored glasses and them going, well, this really sucks, but you know, if you like it, that's fine. So I don't know. It's like, for me, the liner notes is like the smallest amount of respect paid to, and I mean that like in a good way. It's like there could be more respect paid to what went on to make sure that that album even saw the light of day. You know?
This, by the way, Queen Zombie says, Zombie makes me think of School of Rock movie where he gave them specific bands to listen to for the different musicians. That was awesome. And you're absolutely right. He gave physical copies. Go home and listen to this. This is amazing. Yep. To all of that. Yeah. And I think that the credits at the end of movies are kind of paying homage. Homage to
for
that.
Sure. Yeah.
And we've kind of lost that. And just as an extension to that, I just moved, as I said, to wine country.
Excellent.
I like cider, though. There's more cider here. But I just moved here, and I went through all my CDs in my storage.
Yeah.
And I had hundreds, man. Hundreds of them. Back when they were, like, I put them in binders, and I had all the artwork separate, and I had them. And begrudgingly or regretfully, I had to get rid of them. I just couldn't validate bringing them to this new place.
Gotcha.
I kept a few of them that were important, but I ended up giving them to a friend of mine who collects them. He's got like 15,000 CDs, and he loves physical media for all the reasons that we're talking about right now. He loves physical media. So I felt like they went to a great, great home. As a matter of fact, he said majority of them were doubles, so he'd make sure that they would go to a good home for him. But physical copies are very, very important. So I'm really glad, just to kind of wrap that up, I'm very happy we're putting a spotlight on the people that make the albums that we loved so much. Kind of spotlight, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, is it because so much is online now, I just thought, okay, well, so let's do that. Let's be the liner notes for this generation.
Yeah. Queen says it right. MTV, when they share little bits of history, pop-up video. Pop-up video.
Love pop-up video.
Classic. Well, do we want to dive in here? We've got our guest waiting in the wings. And normally I would have something witty and some kind of big question kind of queued up, but I don't this time because as a lot of people know, and as a matter of fact, I think Queen might have, or Real Clear Diamond actually was in my previous stream. I stream with my 10-year-old niece, Mags Muggins, and we do science and technology streaming on Saturday. And sometimes, Sean, you know, she'll give me advice on how I should get into other streams, and she gives me questions to ask guests. Yep. So I've actually got some 5 quick fire questions for our guest. So I'd like to bring in the infamous Mitch Dorge from the Crash Test Dummies. Mitch, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm well. A little frog in my throat, but I'm here.
Oh, wow.
All right. And now you've had, how old is your niece?
She's 10. She's 10.
She's 10. Yeah. So I get some quick fire questions composed by a 10-year-old.
That is correct.
Yes, by a 10-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are probably going to be better questions than I've had from like university grads. Anyway,
I don't think
I can guarantee it.
Okay.
Probably not, but we're gonna see this. We're gonna learn about Mitch right now.
Okay. All right.
What's your favorite type of chocolate?
Rochers.
Really?
Yeah.
Those are great, man.
I like the Rochers. I like them for a number of reasons. I like the chocolate. I like the texture.
Yep.
I like the fact that you can just like unwrap one and like pop it in, and you get, you know, and the Rochers are really, really consistent. I find, like, you know, I do like a Kit Kat periodically. I used to really like the Bar 6. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember Bar 6.
No.
But Bar 6 in the late 60s or 70s There was a Cadbury's Bar 6 was amazing, but now it would be the Rochers because of the texture, the consistency of the chocolate, and get like it's like unwrapping a gift every time.
Yeah.
For sure.
But it sounds like you're not just having them during Christmas, because that seems to be when they get the focal point is Christmas time. You'll have them all year round.
No. I see them when I'm going through the co-op checkout or the Safeway checkout or the Sobeys checkout or whatever checkout. I look to the right hand side and there's like those little 3-packs, and my brain says don't do it, and no, my brain says do it.
Yes.
My gut says don't do it.
And
I just do it.
Yep. So we know that next time you're doing a drum festival, in your rider is definitely Rochers. I love it. Okay.
There would be Rochers, not M&Ms. They would be Rochers.
What is your favorite holiday?
Ooh, favorite holiday. My wife's birthday.
Oh.
I don't know, because that's kind of a holiday for me. But you're speaking like a holiday, like a bank holiday, like
it could be anything. To be honest, whatever day you feel like you celebrate throughout the year.
Okay, so Halloween.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Halloween, and then we get into the simpler questions. What's your favorite color?
Somehow I knew that was coming.
Of course,
I don't know. I don't know that I would have a favorite color. Now the reason being is, for instance, my drums are, from a distance, they look like gold sparkle. But I also have silver sparkle. And I remember I used to have these pearls that had a kind of an odd finish, and they were called copper flake something or other. But I would probably say like the champagne sparkle would be so, because it's a sparkle, or I don't know that it actually constitutes a color.
Oh my goodness.
But I would say if push came to shove, I'm just thinking of this just now because this is something that my wife Tony says no to me a lot when I say let's paint the kitchen like a really sort of farm rust color. I like that rust color. I don't know how to define it other than rust.
Like a yellowy brown.
We're not painting the kitchen the rust color. And then if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see that I tend to take pictures of things, in particular like old rusty metal things, or I like a Dunnett snare drum that, like, before he's actually turned it into a snare drum. And it's been rusting out in the field for like 3 months or 5 years or whatever. And then he pulls it out and says, I'm going to turn this into, and I go, don't play with the color. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Color. But I don't know what color that is. So rust.
Patina and rust. Oh my goodness. I love it. Nice. Not the answer I was expecting, but that's.
Oh, what were you expecting? Black?
Blue.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, it's even better. That's a great answer.
Rust.
Favorite
Ron
food.
Dunnett, rust.
Right, perfect. Yeah, no, you're right. Favorite food.
Favorite food.
Yep.
Ooh, that's another toughie, because I am a man who rarely says no to anything I haven't eaten. We go someplace, I'm likely to order off the menu something I've never had.
Dude,
so that's a difficult question to say what's my favorite food. And Tony will verify that. Anytime we go to any restaurant, I never go for what I've had. I usually look and I go, wow, I don't think I've ever had this. I'm going to try this. And so my favorite food
is the unknown.
Boy. Yeah, maybe it's the unknown that's my favorite food. Maybe I'm still looking for my favorite food.
Mitch, that resonates hard with me. Sean knows. Whenever I go out for meals, I always refer to it as rolling the dice. And I always ask the waiter or waitress, I want to have whatever your favorite is, however you eat it, and I don't want to know what it is. All the time.
That is not unlike something I would say.
I love it. Yeah. Yep. Getting stuff off menu, like if there's a variation that the way that the waiter or waitress makes it, or something that doesn't get ordered very often that they have on a Friday night after the store closes, like that's the type of stuff that I want, right?
So is this the thing that you ask at Denny's?
Yes. To all that, yes. Everywhere.
Wow.
Unless I'm craving something, unless I'm like, we need to go to Denny's to get a Moons Over My Hammy. That needs to happen, and my body needs that, which is rare.
Wow.
I'll roll the dice just about anywhere. Yeah.
Oh, see, I won't go to a place. I won't, but I generally won't walk into a place that's got a set menu, like a Denny's or that kind of a thing, just because I know what the set menu is going to be. I like to walk down the place and it'll be, Gonzo's Falafel Emporium, and I know that the guy's name is Gonzo, and I know that he's going to have some special thing in his falafel that's going to knock my socks off. Yes. And I'm usually not disappointed. I don't know if it's like that for you, but I'm usually not disappointed.
I've only been disappointed, and I wouldn't even say disappointed, but I was surprised one time, and it was at NAMM. Sorry, we're going way off track here, but I'm really enjoying this. It was at NAMM, so in California. We went out for dinner, and I rolled the dice with dinner, and it was great. So I rolled the dice with dessert. And the waiter brought me what's called a whoopie pie. I don't know if you've ever had a whoopie pie, but dude, it was huge. It was like easily a family service. Exactly. It was a family-sized, ironically, family-sized cake. And I just said, you need to bring out more spoons. And I just ate that and hated myself afterwards. I think he was just like trying to get rid of the whoopie pie in the back at the end of the night, but that was the only time. Everything out of that, it's been great.
Okay, well, just before we ditch this idea, have you ever had uni?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Wow.
I may actually have uni tonight. Yeah.
Oh, so uni is one thing that I just, it's a texture thing. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't. Interesting. Yeah, uni. Yeah. Uni. If uni's on the menu, I avoid uni.
You'll say no way.
I'll say no. I wouldn't say no way, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't be the first thing on my thing. Okay. So
I hear you.
Yeah.
Coconut's my steer clear, by the way. So
really?
the only thing on planet Earth where, given the choice, if I'm looking at it and it's got coconut on it, I will probably not choose it. But if it's put in front of me, I'll eat it. That sounds good. But yeah.
Wow. Sean's avoiding this one, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite is uni and coconut pie. So,
okay, we're done here.
Oh, which ironically is called whoopie pie. I
think it would be. Very last question, which is kind of pertinent here. What's your favorite song? And I asked her, on this album that we're talking about tonight, or in general, and she said it can be both. So maybe it's a double-edged sword here. Maybe you answer, what's your favorite song, your go-to song that sometimes you can't get out of your head, and then we'll segue into God Shuffled His Feet. What's your favorite tune on that album? Go for it.
Well, I would say, again, it's a very difficult question to answer because unlike, when someone comes to me and says, who's the best drummer? I absolutely despise that question. It's a question I just think should never be asked of anyone. There are so many drummers that influence me in so many ways, and to say one is better than the other is just beyond me. And for someone to say, well, who's your go-to? What day is it? What time is it? Which way is the wind going? All that kind of stuff. However, I would say that there are pieces of music out there that I don't think I could ever tire of. And one of those pieces would be off of Pat Metheny's 8081 recording, and it's called Two Folk Songs. It's with Jack DeJohnette, Pat Metheny, and Holland on bass. And that particular song, Two Folk Songs, I could probably, every time I hear that, I just feel good. And it's a song that I could listen to over and over again. I just find that one of the things about music in general is recording a piece of music and playing a piece of music is usually two different concepts. When you go see a concert somewhere and the band is just on that night, even had they recorded it, being in the room is so much more pertinent, more sustaining in your heart, in your lungs, in your brain. It's just like the smell in the room, the heat in the room, the music, everything else. And even if you recorded it, it's kind of like, yeah, I remember that, but it's just not like being there. And I find that with 8081, that album, and in particular two folk songs, I think if I'd been in the audience and they had played that at that time, I think I would have spontaneously combusted. Just so much feel and artistry and musicianship, and by musicianship I mean all things technical and emotional, and it's got everything. So I wouldn't say that it's my most favorite piece of music in the world, but I would say that it's a piece of music that I could listen to time and time again and never tire of it.
I'm really enjoying your definition of that. That's really, really good. I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's a great definition. Yeah.
Good.
So your second question, which you would be talking about off of God Shuffled His Feet.
Yes.
Also a very difficult question to answer. For many reasons, but the most pertinent, I think, to the answer to that question would be that every time we play that album, and believe me, since 1994, we've played those songs a lot. And every time we play any of those songs, even though it's the audience's, or even though it's our, thousandth time of playing that piece of music, there are many people in the audience. It's their first, and every song I play, honestly, like it's the best song in the entire world, and like it's a song that if I was on a desert island that I could not live without. It doesn't matter which song on the album. I want to relate to an audience that this is the best thing ever, from my perspective. And so each time we play any of the songs, really, honestly, I play them like they are my favorite songs ever. And when I listen to the album, in particular, God Shuffled His Feet, there's a history that goes with each song. There's a smell, there's a taste, there's a thing that goes with each one. And again, to say that one of them would be my favorite, it would be like saying which is the best drummer. I couldn't answer that truthfully.
Yeah, respect.
Now, of course, coming from a 10-year-old asking that question, that's not really a definitive answer. But really, it's the best that I can do right now. And I apologize to her for not giving her the best answer I could.
As a matter of fact, the best answer is the unexpected answer. So in this case, this is a good life lesson. This is a good direction, a good way of looking at things that maybe a lot of people don't. So, Mitch, thank you for those perspectives on those answers. Absolutely. Thank you, dude.
Very good. Yeah.
It does make me hearken back that you're right. You may not have favorites on the album. I don't want to say but I would say but. I'm sure that through the recording process of it, and we'll go. Let's go all the way back a tiny bit. I'm sure that there are tunes that you remember being in the studio recording that may have resonated with you. It may have flowed a little bit easier laying the tracks. It might have been a little bit harder, but you have kind of a connection to these tunes that we don't. And that you remember the process of them being made, and some might have been difficult, some might have been easy. There could have been politics. There could have been people late to the recording studio. There could have been lots of stories behind each song. So I just think about the fact that you probably have a little bit, I don't want to say favorite, but I'm sure that there are certain songs that kind of connect to you where you're like, that was actually a really fun song to make. Is there one in particular that resonates with you that is kind of like that?
There's they all have a unique story behind them.
Yeah.
I would probably say of that, if there was going to be a story behind any one of them, and not to bore you with the details, there's actually a pretty good story behind any one of them. But in the process of God Shuffled His Feet, there were many things to consider. At that particular point in time, we were dealing with record companies. We are dealing with what our audience wants. There's dealing with radio stations. There's dealing with what is a commercial enough release.
Right.
All those kinds of questions, because you're dealing with record companies, and even though everybody wants to be the artist and say, I want to do my Crash Test Dummies is a very intelligent organization, even if you take me out of the equation and I were just to look at my bandmates are smart people, and
Right.
so when we were working on God Shovel This Feet, and we'd worked out a lot of the songs. One of the songs in particular, Two Knights and Maidens. Now, the reason I point that one out is that we were talking to a lot of different people who were potential producers for the project. And one of those producers that we were excited about, which has his name on the album, and unfortunately he did not see the album through, but was Jerry Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Harrison is the keyboard player from Talking Heads.
Talking Heads, yeah.
Yes.
And Jerry's a wonderful human being. The unfortunate thing is that a number of years ago, a fellow asked me to write a piece of music for his movie. And when I worked on this piece and everything else, and I gave it to him, and he said, Mitch, this is a really wonderful piece of music, but just not for my movie. And I said, okay, great. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I would say the same thing of Jerry Harrison in this particular case. Jerry Harrison is a wonderful musician and has great producer ideas and everything else. But I don't think that he was the right guy for Crash Test Dummies. So now how did I know that? Yeah. Jerry flew in to meet the band and discuss possible ideas for recording God Shovel This Feet. And by God Shovel This Feet, I don't necessarily mean the song, I mean the album.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think people might think I'm talking about the song, specifically God Shovel This Feet. But I'm talking about Two Knights and Maidens, which is on the God Shovel This Feet album.
Now,
when we and spoilers, that's my favorite song on the album, by the way. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Which?
Two Knights and Maidens.
Okay.
We'll never get tired of a song. That's actually one of my tunes. Yeah.
Oh, well, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now my experience in music goes beyond drumming, and I tend to be very visual in everything that I do. And my bandmates, bless their souls, they put up with me because I just don't look at things the way that other people do. I just look at them differently. So when it came to Two Knights and Maidens, Jerry Harrison came to meet us, and we had this meeting up in the top, and he was talking about different concepts that we had for different parts of different pieces of music that were on the album. And when it came to Two Knights and Maidens, he was saying, well, I don't know, I'm not 100% sure, like, where do you guys see this going? And so Brad, with one eyebrow lifted, looked over at me and said, Mitch. And so my concept for this thing was, I said, okay, so I want you to put yourself like you're in a glider plane. You're not in a plane, you're in a glider. And you're over the desert. And as you're flying over the desert, now the reason it had to be a glider is because you'd be over the, if you guys have ever been in a glider, gliders are very noisy planes. You don't see it because you just see them up in the sky and there's no motor, right? So you see them floating through the sky and you think that they're a really peaceful thing. But inside a glider, it's a very loud thing. But it's loud because of the wind and wind resistance and all that kind of stuff. Yep. But regardless of that, I said, okay, picture yourself, you're in a glider and you're going over the desert, and way, 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 way off in the distance, there's a castle. Now this would have been like way, way, way before Game of Thrones. So, but think of the castle like in Game of Thrones. And as the glider is going and then it's coming in and you feel the intensity of the wind building, and then all of a sudden, right when the glider hits the castle, or just before it hits the castle, it goes up, and that's when the first chord goes ring, ding, ding, right from that. And the glider takes off and it goes up and it goes around, and then every time, and this happens 3 times. And if you think about the way that Two Nights and Maidens works out. The beginning of the song is this sort of rusty, metally kind of sound that's off in the distance, and then it swells and it goes ring ding right into the first verse, and then it goes around, and then each verse that it comes into, the verse is a little bit louder. There's more going on musically, but there's always a zing going into each verse, and so I'm explaining this to Jerry, and Jerry's looking at me like, I don't know what this guy's on, but you know, whatever it is, it's getting him through the day. And and I'm talking about, you know, what the glider sees, what the pilot sees as he's going over the castle. And he looks down into the castle, and you know, the first time he goes through, there's like a very moderate amount of people that are milling about the castle, but the second time he goes over the castle, like, it's starting to get pretty tense down there, and there's you know, warlords starting to show up, and then there's a third time that it goes through, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, Jerry's looking at me and he's thinking, whoa, okay, yeah, sure, Mitch, no problem. And at the time, because Two Nights and Maidens wouldn't have been a single right off the album, it's definitely an album track.
Right.
There was, to me, and my perception may be wrong, but I was looking at Jerry and I was saying, he's not getting this. Like, he's not getting what I'm talking about. Like, it's an album track. It's not the single. Why are we putting so much time into this and time and thought into this? Is what I kind of felt from it. Gotcha. I may be wrong. His perception may have been something else. But this is when it first became apparent to me that maybe this was not going to be a great idea. Nonetheless, we talked through other tunes and everything else. When it came to the studio, by the time we got to recording Two Nights and Maidens, Jerry was no longer working with us at that point.
Oh, okay.
Now, Jerry was very kind, and at the time, because you got to think the technology was different then than now.
Yeah,
now
for sure.
Everything sits in your computer. It's no problem.
Yeah.
At the time, Jerry and I used to have these long conversations about the Kurzweil 2000S and the Emulator 2.
Dude, I owned a K2000. Yeah, awesome.
Well, there you go. So
nice.
Yeah, that's that. You're telling me how old you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we were going back and forth, and of course I was the Kurzweil advocate, and Jerry was the emulator advocate. Nonetheless, I didn't own a Kurzweil at the time. Jerry did own an emulator, and he had a bunch of other soft synths that were really, really nice, or hard synths, I should say. Okay. So even though Jerry, at one point, it was best decided that we're just going to keep butting heads on how these songs should sound. And it's not because he was wrong. It's just because he had a different vision, right? And his vision and our vision were different. And that's the only thing that was, and I think that's important to understand, because I think sometimes people say, well, you know, if he's not there, if he's not in the studio, there some shit must have gone down. And it's like, no, no shit went down. It just wasn't the right thing. But he was very kind, and he left me his rack of synthesizers and emulators and stuff like that to work with. So gotcha. I would spend my days going through all the sounds and everything that I thought was really kind of neat. And we had formulated what was going to be the sound for this thing. Now, I hope I'm not boring you too much with this. So
you're talking about my favorite tune, so you're not boring me at all. Yeah,
that's the point. This is the point of the show: is these stories.
Okay, so we recorded that particular. There was lots going on with that album. There's a lot. There's many things. Yeah. But at that particular point in time, we were at Royal Studios, which was the old, just outside of Lake Geneva. And it was owned by Hugh Hefner. It was the Playboy Resort at one point in time. Now it was just a golf course resort hotel, but the studio was still there. And a fellow by the name of Dan Harjung, and I can't remember the other fellow's name. I apologize for that to him. But Dan Harjung and this fellow were the owners of the studio, and Dan was the main engineer. And there was another engineer there by the name of Pat Murphy, who I felt in a lot of cases, especially from the drum perspective, Pat was he got it. He knew when I was talking drum sounds, or when I was like, he just knew what I was talking about, and he just got it. So I used every possible opportunity to record with Pat, and the problem that presented itself with this particular song was that I didn't want it to come across as like we're trying to be sophisticated jazz bows,
Right.
Right? Because it's in 6/8, and you know, it's got nice changes and everything else. But we didn't want it to be jazz bows. But I also didn't want it to be paint by numbers.
Right.
I wanted it to feel like it was an accessible commercial song, but that we kind of colored outside the lines with it. That's really
okay.
what I wanted it to feel like. And I didn't want it to be playerly, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want it to be programmed. Like, I just didn't want it to feel like it was a thing. But I wanted it, as a drummer, to be able to just step outside, boom chuck, boom chuck. So Pat
there were some good hi-hat syncopations that happened during that song in particular, which I always appreciate. So yeah.
It was fun. It was really that song was just fun to play, like, all the way along. And of course, because it's one of those songs, right? Record company wasn't crazy about it. It wasn't going to be a release and all that kind of stuff. So Pat really figured out, he knew what I was going for. And so we went into the studio, and I remember he had the kit was so well mic'd. It was amazing. And he had taken a piano stool and put it in front of the bass drum, and then he had taken movers blankets, and he had made like a tunnel. So my bass drum essentially was a 20-inch bass drum, and it was probably 6 feet long. It was just a big long tube, and I think he mic'd it at 2 points, and then he mic'd it from the back. Had mics out in the room. There probably must have been like 24 mics live in the room while we recorded that thing, and it's because he was trying to catch the nuances just beyond kick, snare, hat, toms. He really tried to get lots of room in there, which I think he did successfully. It took a long time, though, because we were constantly moving mics inches and creating this long tunnel and trying to figure out where the best kick drum sound was going to be. And I think we swapped out 5 or 6 different snares, right? So it's a lot of playing with the track, and then swap out the snare, play with the track again, swap out the snare. Now, the more you play something, the more unimaginative it gets in that realm. Because there's parameters that you have to stick to, because regardless of whatever it is, we're still trying to be commercially accessible. So the spontaneity of hey, let's try this, or let's do that, or that energy that you have in the first couple of takes starts to disintegrate pretty quickly. So as a bass drum, and go through that, and then let's play this thing, and then let's swap out this snare, and then what about what if we put a couple of splash cymbals over here instead, and this cymbal is kind of, I don't know if it's got the right tone for us, so let's swap that out. That's also the problem of showing up with too many instruments at the because you're swapping things out. The whole day goes by and you're still playing the same song. So I really I was worried that we were going to lose that thing. And at one point, Pat just said, "You know what? I'm just going to push record and go.
Cool.
We're just gonna record it. I'm not listening to it. Just go." And I really, like, I had to stop and think. Like, I've just played this thing 50 times. Can I just go? And I did I just went. And Pat came on. I think we did 3 takes, and Pat said, really, in my opinion, any of the three are great. Yeah. So I find fantastic, you know. Now again, we're not talking about the single off the record, but at the time, this is something. I mean, every song had different concerns, but this one had the concern of it's not the single. It is a little coloring outside the lines. It does bring something to the album that isn't in all the other songs, because now we have one more bridge to cross. Once we get all these things in here, there's all these other little sounds that we're bringing in, the backward cymbals and the backward piano chords and all those kinds of things. Now, luckily, I had a hotel room, which was just down 50 feet from the studio. So perfect. I'm an early bird, and I would be in the studio at 6 a.m, 7 a.m, and I'd be working on sounds and backward piano sounds and doing all those things and bringing all that into it. And then I would, in the afternoon, when Brad would come in and do vocal tracks and stuff like that, I'd be in my hotel room with my ghetto blaster, listening to all these potential sounds that we were going to use, and you know, how the drums would feel. And of course, the more you listen to something, the more you go, oh geez, that snare's a little late, or the kick drum's a little earlier.
Yes.
All those kinds of things. So the next hurdling block for that particular tune was, when we mix this thing, is the mixer going to get what this song is about? Like, just, you know, the glider playing and everything else. And so whether you know this or not, but Tom Lord Alge mixed that album.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
We had heard all kinds of horror stories about him being hard to work with and everything else. He was amazing. I sat with him through all the whole album, and I couldn't, honestly, I couldn't work as long as he did on those things. But when we started,
and just for those listening, Mitch, for those listening, Tom Lord Alge is kind of revered as the go-to mix engineer in general, but it's kind of, and I don't want to put him too much on a pedestal, but the Alge family really getting them on your album is kind of a big deal. That's definitely gives you a bit of notoriety. And on that shoulder, like, if you go to Tom's wiki page, which I did this afternoon, it's actually credited, like, after mixing Crash Test Dummies, God Shuffled His Feet, his success, like, basically that helped his career. You're welcome, Tom, you know, type thing.
Yeah, well, I thank Tom. Because what a lot of people don't know is, when he came to mix our record, he had just come from working with Carter Beauford, and so he came into the studio, and of course we were talking about drums and stuff like that. He loves drums, by the way. We just started talking about drums, and he said, "Yeah, I just came from working with this drummer Carter Beauford," and it's like, "Wow, it's really cool." And he's really kind of a busy drummer, but he really nails it, and he's got all these little things that he does, and so wouldn't you know, here we are now. We're bringing up Two Nights in Maidens, which is kind of loaded up with all these little things, and he just cued right into it. He just said, "I know exactly what you're talking about with in terms of how this should sound." And he took it from where I thought it should be, and he brought it up a little bit more. And once again, we wouldn't have had that connection with Tom Lord Alge if it wasn't for Jerry Harrison. So I thank Jerry Harrison for that as well.
Sure.
But Tom was amazing. He just, on every song on that album, he got it. He knew what we were talking about when we did that. And then not only did he know what we were talking about, but he took it up another little notch in some cases. And you know what? There were some times where he kind of missed the boat a little bit. And I spent a lot of time with him during the mixing of that album. And I'd say, well, you know what? This is neat, but this is kind of like what I was thinking. And he'd say, "Whoa, man, that, I know what you're talking about on that thing. This is, we can make that happen."
That's how he talks, too.
That is actually a really good impression.
Exactly. Well, you got to get a little bit more down here. You know what I'm saying? I got the ZX7. Anyway, so he...
there is a master... there is a huge juxtaposition... Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but he just bubbled with enthusiasm, like as opposed to like, oh, you're just a stupid drummer. What do you know? He bubbled with enthusiasm and said, yeah, let's try that. And not only did he grasp the idea, but he took up another notch. So for Two Nights and Maidens on this particular album, to me that had the longest story of all the pieces that were on there, because it went through the, first of all, Brad coming to us and saying, hey guys, what do you think of this? And we played with it and we worked on the pre-production, and it was never going to be the single, and then using that to audition Jerry Harrison in terms of what I thought our connection was going to be, into the studio, working with different people, finding Pat Murphy, who just got it and really wanted to work with me on getting the amazing drum sounds and try to capture the playing, to Tom Lord Alge, taking it up a whole notch from there. Really, at the end of the day, might be your favorite song on the album.
It is.
But in terms of commercial accessibility, it's a song.
It's interesting. Oh man, all of this is resonating hard with me. Thank you so much. It's kind of, I'm a big fan of like track 11s. Sean has heard me talk about this before. What I refer to as track 11s are just the obscure songs that aren't the singles, but definitely have a connection to some audience members. And that song in particular connected with me for all the reasons that you're saying, is that there's a massive juxtaposition between the dynamics of the drums, or all the instrumentation in particular in that song, versus like How Does a Duck Know? You know what I mean? Where I don't know how to say this respectfully, but you're being a great timekeeper in that song. You know what I mean? And like it's just it's all different at that point, right? And I'm really I like the dynamical change in that song in particular. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that went into that. I mean, I'll let you guys, steer me where you want to go. Yeah. Now that we've got Two Nights and Maidens out of the way.
Quite. Well, can I?
The only thing that.
Go for it.
I actually did have a question. It was just kind of a general wonderment, as Ross would say in Friends. But what is the connection to Wisconsin for that album, Mitch? Why was it Milwaukee and Lake Geneva?
Jerry had a friend that he worked with in I think he was a friend of Dan Harjung's, or he knew somebody that was connected to Royal Studios.
Okay, gotcha.
When we first started recording the album, we went to another studio, which was in Milwaukee.
Right.
And we recorded Umity 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 and Swimming in Your Ocean. I think we did the bed tracks for those two songs in that studio, which, again, story-wise, we'd arrived in Milwaukee, and right outside of our hotel was a beautiful park, and so we said, hey, there's this beautiful park down here. This is awesome. Let's go check this out. And wouldn't you know it, in the middle of this park there was a little kiosk that rented rollerblades. And so we all strapped on our rollerblades and we went for a rollerblade adventure. And probably 7 minutes into our adventure, Dan, who's a hockey player, went to do a turn, and he turned, but his knee didn't.
Oh. And you can't do hockey stops with rollerblades. Spoilers.
No. So an ambulance ride and a hospital visit and a knee brace, and so he recorded all the tracks, all those tracks that we did in Milwaukee. He recorded in a chair with his leg in a cast, on lots of ibuprofen.
Wow.
Trying to nail his bass tracks.
Wow.
But
was this in any way going to influence the Coffee Spoons video?
No, Coffee Spoons
No,
came
okay.
later.
That's funny.
So,
Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. Okay.
so yeah,
That was fumbling. Yeah.
so the I believe that we started recording there with the intention of going to Royal. And
Okay.
then we had another issue, and I can't remember exactly why it was, but we had to work on some keyboard parts. We had to get me out of the studio for some reason for a couple of days, and we ended up in a studio in Chicago, which belonged to a fellow by the name of Tommy Lipnick. And we recorded a lot of the keyboard parts. Like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out keyboard sounds, and Ellen played all the keyboards on that album. But there were sounds and stuff like that we were exploring, and so we did that at Tommy Lipnick's place for a while before going back to Royal. And I think because I think that happened because we had booked X amount of time at Royal Studios, and they had another client coming in for a session. They tried to move them over. They couldn't move them over, so they had to honor that. And so we went to Chicago to Tommy Lipnick's studio while they were doing that.
Gotcha.
So the Wisconsin thing, again, was a connection that Jerry had.
Great.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
We got into Two Knights and Maidens almost prematurely, but I wanted to take things really far back. I'm a big fan of origin stories here, Mitch, but I think it's handy to know kind of the experience of this. And what's important to me is whenever I do, somebody gives me an album that I've got to now perform live with, I'm playing a lot of tracks that I didn't actually track. And now I'm treating them kind of like covers for the band that I'm playing in right now because I wasn't on the recording. But then the next album comes out, and all the time I get included in that second album, and now I'm bringing my personality into that second album. And I kind of feel, how did that happen with Crash Test Dummies, that you came in on God Shuffled His Feet? You were not on the Ghosts That Haunt Me album, but how did the origin of you getting put into the Crash Test Dummies drummer seat and now be taking on such an authoritative role in the recording of the next album? I'm kind of curious about that process.
Well, a little bit of luck, and perhaps me just being me. Vince Lambert, who was the original drummer for Crash Test Dummies, we'll say the original drummer that played with Crash Test Dummies. There are a few drummers in there, but Vince Lambert recorded on The Ghosts That Haunt Me. And going into the studio with him, there were some problems. There were problems in the studio. I think just maybe some personality issues between him and the band.
Right.
I never really delved into it that much.
Sure.
But I can tell you this, that Vince Lambert, for whatever reason, thought I walked on water. If I walked into a room and he was playing, he would just get all nervous and drop his sticks and everything else.
Yeah.
And so when it was becoming apparent that he was going to be leaving the band or asked to leave, or however that transpired, thanks to Vince, Vince used to talk about me like I walked on water. He was very flattering. He was very kind. He said wonderful things about me all the time. So when they were looking for different drummers, and different drummers auditioned and tried out, actually Chris Sutherland, if you know Chris Sutherland, of course you do. Chris Sutherland actually got hired by Crash Test Dummies. He was going to be the guy. And because he auditioned. I never auditioned for the band. I was quite busy at the time. And they had a record deal and stuff like that, but so what? I knew what a record deal meant. It's a really big loan, and
well done. Yeah.
Maybe if your head's screwed on right, it'll be okay. But anyway, so Chris got it, but then I think an opportunity came up to play with Streetheart, or Kenny Shields. Actually, it was Kenny Shields. I don't think it was Streetheart at the time. And that's just what Chris wanted to do at the time. That's where his heart was, right? Cool. And so he kind of left them. So he left them. He left them in a lurch. They were going down to do what do you call it? Like not a record release, but a presentation or a conference for BMG in the Cayman Islands.
Whoa!
And Brad called me and said, "Look, we're in a bind. We got to go down and do this thing. Would you be willing to come and play it with us? We'll pay you whatever you want, but we're strapped. We have to do this, and we need someone that can just walk in and do this." So honestly, at the time, I couldn't do it because I was supposed to be going. This was going to be April 8th, and don't ask me how I remember that date.
Wow. Yeah.
But we were supposed to go down the Caymans. They were supposed to go down the Caymans on April 8th. I was going to be going to Europe with Jacques Lussier, so I couldn't do it. Sorry. Thanks so much for considering me. But in those days, we had a rotary phone, and like as soon as Brad called, the phone wasn't even out of my hand yet. I just put it back on the receiver, and it rang again. And it was Jacques, the guy I was supposed to go to Europe with. He said, "There's a couple of festivals here. They that won't sign a contract. I don't want to take a chance to go to Europe and then lose my shirt because we don't get paid or whatever. So we're postponing the tour, or we're just not going to go, whatever." And I said, "Okay, great." So I called Brad back right away, and I said, "Hey, let's go do this." So we had a couple of rehearsals. At which point, I was just the drummer for hire.
Yeah.
And
you're playing covers, right? What I was talking about. You're just playing covers. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I've never really approached music like that. I approach it, if I'm playing it, I wrote it. It doesn't matter what I'm playing. I don't it's, when I play with Fred Penner, it's the same thing. Every Fred Penner song I play it like I wrote it with him in the studio. I try to take ownership of the parts. Anyway.
Let me cross off. That was going to be my next question, by the way. So you've literally answered my next question. I love it. Keep going.
Okay, so we went down to the Caymans. We had a few rehearsals. We weren't it wasn't a full show. It was 20 minutes or something. We went down to the Caymans. I had a chance to really. I mean, I knew everybody prior to, because we used to play the Blue Note Cafe and stuff like that together all the time. So I knew everybody, but you don't know what this record deal and all that kind of stuff brings out in people. Yeah. So we went down to the Caymans, and I said, "Wow, like this is so impressive. Like these people are smart. They're smart individuals, and they're not going around going, 'Hey, we got a record deal. We got a record deal. We're famous. We're this.'" They knew very well what that meant. And it was very important to them that the music be played authentically. It had to have a feel. You had to understand what was going on, and I admired that. I was like, wow, like you guys haven't got your head up your ass. This is amazing. And so at that point, I said, "Look, if you guys are interested, I'm happy to make this my priority gig." And we've never looked back since. But so originally, in this whole thing, I was brought on as the drummer. As we were working on songs, Brad would be bringing songs in and saying, "Okay, let's try this, let's try that." I had a much bigger input into what was going on. I'm not saying that I brought things, but I mean, I've always been a team player. So if I go in and I say, "Here's an idea. What do you think of this?" And we would move on. And maybe some of the stuff that I brought to the table was in a direction that they may not have thought of. Yeah. And if I brought something to the table that wasn't the right thing, I was never insulted if it was, okay, that's a good idea, but no. And I wouldn't sit there and go, "Oh, well, listening to my ideas," and be like, "Well, okay, so let me grasp this concept more so I can really understand what's going on and understand why my idea really didn't fit in here." But a lot of my ideas did work, and I'm not. I like to say that they were my ideas, but they were a seed that was planted that everybody grabbed onto, and so I might come in with one idea, and Dan might say, "Oh, well, wait a minute, let's try this instead," but based on that idea. It became apparent that I was a team player. It became apparent that I was not necessarily concerned about how I looked in the situation, but how we looked as a whole. Yeah. And so during the recording of God Shuffled His Feet, even though it started off at the point where I was the drummer, it was explained to me from Brad, because he's the one that pulled me aside and said, look, you've brought way more to this project than being the drummer, and we would like you to be like a full-fledged, member of the band, and that's
great.
contractual obligations and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a compliment, like, wow, I was bringing something of myself to the project. And so from there on, it became, everybody threw their own little bit of beer into the soup.
Cool. Very cool.
On that, you can always see people's true colors under pressure, and it's interesting. The first album, from what I understand, was lower budget. Obviously, I don't want to say obviously, but it was lower budget. But the God Shuffled Its Feet seemed like it kind of sprung everybody into a bigger studio, bigger names, more pressure maybe from the record label to do things, and I'm sure that there were dynamics within everybody. You got to know everybody very well. You're thrown into as you say, the beer soup. You're thrown into a situation that maybe a lot of people hadn't experienced. Did you feel that?
Sure, to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Crash Test Dummies is everybody in that band thinks of it as a whole.
Yeah.
No one really thinks of it as an individualistic thing. So everything we try to do is to make the product better. If I'm just going to be cold and corporate on that,
Sure.
I'm going to call it a product.
Yeah.
And at the same time, maintain what we believe Crash Test Dummies was. Now, by that, the example I will give you is the title track, God Shuffled His Feet. Mm-hmm. When we recorded that was at the very same time that Annie Lennox had come out with Why? Remember the tune Why?
Yep.
And if you remember correctly, that song was very, very lush, right?
Lots of vocal effects on it.
Vocal harmonies, but even the groove was shoot.
Yeah.
So there was along with that, anytime that there's a band that makes a mark. When the Nirvana came out, a year later there was 50 Nirvanas, sound-alikes, and so at the time, Annie Lennox's Why was really climbing the charts and everything else, and the record company, our A&R guy at the time, felt that the beginning of God Shuffled His Feet should have been lush, like Annie Lennox. And we were consciously kind of poking fun at the industry, because when that song came out, there was 25 or 30 other artists that were coming out with that same sort of lush. So that's when I had this little set. I still have them today, by the way. I have this little set of yellow Junior Pros from Remo, and I bought them 30 years ago, and so we took those drums and we took them into the studio, and I did that stack.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we used a little set of drums. I think we used one microphone to record it, and then we EQ'd it. And really what we were doing is we were just poking fun at the idea that, this is just being made into this big lush thing. And the record company wasn't really too happy about that. They fought us tooth and nail all the way. And it really got unpleasant. But everybody in the band, and like, it wasn't a war,
sure.
But everybody in the band was saying, this is why this works. Like, this is why God Shuffled His Feet works, is because we've taken this concept and we're not making it this, we're not letting the music surpass the content of the song. And as you know, when the song kicks in, then it gets lush.
Yeah.
But
not till halfway through verse 1 though, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But we're just taking a poke, right?
I love
just
it.
taking a poke and trying to be just a little bit more sophisticated, and not just follow the popcorn trail kind of a thing.
Right.
So that, I think that kind of in a roundabout way, at that point, there's lots of pressure because you're dealing with the music industry. And you're dealing with radio, you're dealing with television. There has to be a video made for everything. You've got producers, you've got all these kinds of people that, and to no fault of their own, they're just trying to make a living in the music industry. And the best way that we know how sometimes is to make what we already know is selling, right? This thing is already selling. If we take a chance, what happens if it doesn't sell? Well, A&R people lose their jobs over that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So you can't blame them.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't crack under the pressure of having all these people telling us what it should be. The next one in line for that is right? Record company came down on us for that one, right? Well, why are you just humming this? Well, because that's and originally Brad couldn't think, he didn't have any lyrics for it, so he just hummed what he thought.
He just hummed the chorus.
Yeah. And but it worked. Yep. Right? It worked, and the way that the humming worked, it really drew attention to what was happening in the verse.
Yeah.
Record company didn't see it that way. Record company really thought that it should be something beyond that. And so, again, there was these long phone calls and discussions about what this should be. And no matter which one of us that they talked to, we were all on the same page. We all thought, no, this is how this song works, and this is why it should work.
Yeah.
Much to their surprise, right? Something they did that nobody thought of at the time. The chorus for worked in any language, in any country.
Yup.
Right?
Yeah.
And no one saw that coming. But next thing you know, no matter what country we're in, singing the chorus is no problem.
Yep.
So the pressures, because the band was always united, there was never, the pressures were easy to take, I think, because there was no push and pull. Everybody in Crash Test Dummies knows what Crash Test Dummies is. When we made God Shuffled His Feet, we knew that the sound should be, and everybody agreed on what the sound should be. And how the songs philosophically worked out. Everybody knew what that was, and so therefore there was no inner strife. And even though there was big opposing bulldozers, and believe me, it's not hard. It's a hard thing to take on the record company when they want you to do something, right? Yeah, because they hold the purse strings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's always the role of the producer, is to convey the message or convey the vision to the record company, to fend them off until the final product is done, where they're amazing, because they may not be able to see the whole vision.
Sometimes producers are just big babysitters, though.
True. Well, it's funny because I was just talking to my wife a few hours ago about how one of my little bugaboos in life, not in life, but in the music industry, is a lot of self-producing artists. And because I find it, and I'm generalizing here, but a lot of artists have a hard time looking at their music objectively. And at least a lot of the artists that I've worked with, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but I do find that when you get a producer or somebody that sees the vision or is able to look at things objectively and convey the message properly, I do enjoy those albums. But there's something gold that happened with this album, and you're answering all the questions why. Everybody was on the same page. Everybody saw the vision. Everybody, you already knew what the meal is supposed to taste like. You just needed to put the ingredients together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And people ask these questions often, and bottom line is hang on, I just got to hit this little button. There we go. The bottom line is the majority of the songs within Crash Test Dummies are created by Brad Roberts. Brad Roberts has a particular way of playing songs and writing. We are lucky in that he could just say, this is what I want to do, but he doesn't. he comes to us and says, "Here's a song that I've written. What do you guys think?" And in the case of a song you brought up, "How Does a Duck Know?"
Yeah.
When he originally brought that to us, honestly, it was just another version of Afternoons and Coffee Spoons. It was written the same way, the same jangly chord playing, etc., etc. And we said, you know what, this kind of sounds like Coffee Spoons. We need to take this in a different direction. And so we turned it into the version that's there now. And he was able to look at it and say, okay, this still has the integrity that I wanted it to have in the first place. We've just taken it in a different direction musically, but everybody was on the same page in terms of everybody understands that this is what it is. And no one has that ego thing where they say, well, I have to inject me into this, or I think the song should be like this, or I think of that. We know what the music should be. And boy, I'll tell you that takes a lot of the stress out of a situation, because if someone comes to us and says, well, why don't you do this or do that? We no, this is what we're making over here. We're not, we're making Volvos. We're not making, Priuses. So there's anything wrong with the Prius, right? But those guys over there, they make Priuses, we make Volvos. And we know what that is. And it's important, right? It's important that you stay along the lines that you've created and identified. So
Now, with that being said, God Shuffled Its Feet was a bit of a departure from the first album as well. So there was a bit of a risk that maybe the record label wanted what the first album was, and now, what are you doing here? K2000s? No, what? Slow down.
Yeah, and in the music industry, people are very quick to throw record companies and radio stations and all that. They're very quick to throw them under the bus. But if you sit in their seats for a little while, right? I mean, even record companies. I mean, believe me, I'm not an advocate for the record company, but when you think of how many bands that a record company signs, that especially in those days, that just tank, and they drop $500,000 into a band, and they sell 300 records, and then one of them wants their girlfriend to be the tambourine player, and then the fight all breaks out, the band breaks up. Well, they've lost a fortune. And so you put yourself in their seats, and you, like you just said, you can't blame them, really. I don't like where it leaves it for us, or for some other people, but you can't blame them. They're trying to survive in an industry, and they make mistakes. And so the ones that pay off, they want to really pay off, right? So and the ones that pay off, maybe the band there loses, but the band that got some sort of start, and where they got a bit of an investment into them, at least they had a chance, if it wouldn't be for the ones that did really well, right? So I don't throw them under the bus. I always say, if I had to wear their shoes, I don't know what kind of decisions I would make.
Fair enough.
Right. Yeah.
They gave you some leeway that. Sorry, I'm getting all stumbly here. I want to be respectful of your time as well, for sure. So maybe we'll touch base a bit on just after the album was done. We got into like the music videos, the singles for those for that album, and then even playing on the David Letterman show. You played How Does a Duck Know on, and it wasn't even quote unquote a single, and that was played on David Letterman as well, and that's awesome. What were the impetus of some of the videos, and how much freedom did you guys have on that to support this album?
The videos were mostly created by Ellen. Whenever I'll try to be quick about this. Anytime you have a single, and the record company gets a hold of the single, the record company goes to their people that they work with. They usually submit an idea as to what they believe that something is. In general, those ideas tend to be literal to what the song is. So if the song says, "I was standing in the rain," well, no, there's going to be a guy standing in the rain, right? And we didn't like that. We didn't like that whole concept of being literal. And so there would be a number of proposals that would be put forth to the record company. The record company would go through them. They'd weed them down. So if there were 20, they would weed them down to 10. They would give them to us. We'd look at them and they'd go, "These are all horrible." You know, like they're all literal. They're, you know, and it's, again, you can't blame them, right?
Sure.
They're just kind of going, "This is what's happening on Much Music. This is what's happening on MTV. Let's just create more of this." And so Ellen would say, "Well, I've got an idea." And generally her idea was bang on to what Crash Test Dummies was. And so the only time we didn't do that was on the album Off of A Worm's Life, which is the one following Gotcha Hold His Feet, which we're not allowed to talk about because we're talking about liner notes for Gotcha Hold His Feet.
I like references, though. It's good.
But there was one song, My Own Sunrise, which we actually went to a concept that was given to us from a guy who was going to make it really cool with special effects and stuff like that. And we thought this could be really neat. And after 3 days of filming, the budget tripled. And
Yikes.
So we had to kibosh that. It was like, no, whatever you got, that's what you got to work with, because we're not going $500,000 into the record company because we can. Not going to happen. So that would be, I think, the only video that was done that didn't come from Ellen.
Wow.
Yeah, smart cookie she is.
No doubt. All of those video in another stream that I do, we do a spotlight on retro pop culture and that type of stuff. And we've actually got planned just to watch, even without the music, 90s music videos, because there was something golden in that era of music videos that happened, the stories that happened, and just the imagery that, independent to the music, is brilliant. And not just because I happen to be talking to you, but a lot of the videos, if not all the videos of Crash Test Dummies, are on that pedestal along with all the other ones of that era. So they were well done, man. Yeah,
we can thank Ellen on that one.
Well done.
Now I'm twice now on my device here, I've been warned that my power is getting low.
Let's get out of here.
So I don't see a charger close by because it's not my house. So just in case it goes out, I do have to say, we touched on Two Knights and Maidens, and we touched on the other tunes. In terms of like liner notes or stories that goes with the songs or the people that were involved in making various things happen, we could probably do like another 3 episodes on. I have to thank you for even in the slightest being interested in this kind of stuff. I too am one who likes to have a physical thing in front of me. I like reading who was the engineer or where it was recorded. I even like the pictures. I like the artist's interpretations of even the choice of font that goes into those kinds of things. I agree with you. I remember when I think it was $1 Billion Babies came out. I thought, wow, who's the drummer on this thing? And that was your go-to. You just took out the liner notes, and there it was. And a lot of stuff now doesn't have that. It's kind of sad. But I think this idea that you're doing, and I think you're talking to Aaron soon, right? I think.
We lost your audio there, Sean.
I think that this is cool. This is a really cool idea that you have.
Mitch, thank you, man. We appreciate you being a part of this. And on a personal note, we're probably going to talk to a lot of drummers. Obviously, that's kind of what we do. But on a personal note, that album and your drumming on that, it puts a big smile on my face. I genuinely enjoyed listening to you speak today and tell me all about it. It didn't fall on deaf ears, and I'm hoping that people who are listening to this right now can appreciate it. It's a very influential album, and what you guys did meant a lot.
Totally.
So thank you.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we could get Sean to talk less.
Jeez. This is.
I subscribe to the belief that we have 2 ears and one mouth, so I act accordingly.
Yeah, that's why we balance it out. I talk way too much. That's kind of the deal.
Yeah. Well, anytime you want to talk about more songs off God Shuffled His Feet or A Worm's Life, or just by all means.
Yeah. I was actually going to say,
obviously has more history to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things that happened with that album. And even though Jerry didn't see it through, he only got maybe a couple of weeks into the project, but he brought Tom Lardalgi, he brought our meeting with Pat Murphy, who was so the right engineer for that album. Although Dan Harjan also did some engineering on that album, but a lot of the stuff that I did was with Pat. And if it wasn't for Jerry, we wouldn't have made those connections. And so, I thank him for that. I thank Tom Lardalgi for being on that particular album. He was another Crash Test Dummy on that album, right? And he was the one that had the big ears, and he really brought something special to that. And he, not only as a mixer, but as a human being, right? I think I say that more because we had heard stories about him being very domineering and all those kinds of things. And the man was an absolute gentleman, a pussycat. Tom Lardalgi is a personality unto his own. I'm not going to take that away from him. But our experience with him was nothing but amazing. I've had a chance to talk to the man a few times since then. And every time he's just been like, that best friend that you bump into on an escalator somewhere, right? He's just that guy.
Yeah.
And of course, my bandmates who, and from the drummer's perspective, my bandmates who said, "Yeah, Mitch, do what you do, and we'll black you up." Oh, it's here again. Okay, there we go.
Well, this is it. This is your 3% left. Mitch, you guys are on tour right now? Are you? Yes.
We just finished an American tour. We leave again on May the 11th. We have a show in New York, I think, on the 12th. I think we're in Albany on the 13th, and we're, I think, someplace in Pennsylvania on the 14th, and then we're off to Berlin. And then we spend from that time all over Europe. We finish in Luxembourg on the 19th of June, and then we're going to be out your way at some point. In September, we're going to be out your way,
Vancouver area.
Yeah. So, and if I know that the dates have been made. I just don't know where and when.
Cool.
So Sean will know for sure. Paul, you'll know for sure.
Thanks, dude.
Cool.
Okay, well, we'll let you go because you're at 2% battery power. I can't thank you enough for tonight. Sean, any closing thoughts with Mitch before we let him go?
And I was going to say, I mean, I'm totally open, and I already know a few things that I'd like to ask for part 2 of this liner note. So, and Worm's Life and beyond. So this is going to be a continuing thing for sure, Mitch.
Okay, well, let me know.
Thanks, dude.
We'll let you go. I think they're all waiting for me for dinner, so I'm gonna
get out of here.
I'm gonna go and have dinner.
We appreciate your time. Cheers, bud. Bye.
Okay. Say hi to Tony for us.
There you go, man. Oh, nice.
Man. Yeah, awesome. That was awesome, for sure.
Two Knights and Maidens is genuinely my favorite tune.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That would be on my top 10 taking to a desert island tunes.
I mean, I like the tune. I just the way that Brad and Mitch kind of work off of each other with the way the fill kind of
yes.
It's like Brad's doing this and Mitch is emulating that. Yeah. Literally, you can physically see him. Yeah.
That's funny. There are songs where if you're going to learn it as a cover, there's certain parts you must play, and if you don't play it, then it's weird, right?
Yeah, best be doing it.
I've played a few times, and you have to do that tom fill before every chorus every time.
It's like silk. It's literally like silk.
Man, it's genius. Today was awesome, dude. This was great.
Yeah,
and once again, damn it, I always say we're going to do 45 minutes to an hour, and then we do a ridiculous amount longer.
An hour 25.
I'm okay with that. But man, holy jeez.
Well, we'll dice these up.
So
like
detailed.
It's great that they're live, but I think the ultimate for me, what I see is that we can put these online, and they're going to be, episodic shows. And like I said, I'm totally open. We could do God Shuffled His Feet episode 2.
Agreed. Right.
Again, because I know like it's going to be hard to cover one album in an hour.
True.
There's, so
Voxana says here, Crash Test Dummies was their very first concert that they ever saw. I was trying to think whether or not I've actually seen them. I feel like I have, but I just don't remember. It's just so long ago, man. I just don't remember.
You know what? Full transparency, Mitch is one of my greatest friends and was a huge influence and was my mentor and was my teacher at one point.
Yeah.
And I've never seen them live.
Amazing. Well, no excuses. When they come to town, we have to go there as buds. We got to go see them.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's wrap it up here. Mitch. I was looking at your name, Sean Mitchell. Sean, tell everybody what we're doing next week.
So next week on Saturday at 12 Pacific.
Yes.
In that's mine and PJ's time zone, and then in Aaron Comis's time zone is Eastern, the New York time zone, is 3 p.m. And we're going to be talking to Aaron Comis of the Spin Doctors. We're going to be yapping about the album Pocket Full of Kryptonite.
Yeah.
Probably launched the most famousest snare fill of all time.
Dude, I thought about it. I thought about it today. God Shuffled Its Feet. The album starts with a drum beat, right? The entire album.
Does.
Like,
hey, totally.
Let me put on some Crash Test Dummies for you.
Yeah. That's really good, actually. Wow. They should have got you to beatbox on that.
That comes in, and then Spin Doctors. Hey, let me just put on this. Let me just put on this Spin Doctors Pocket Full of Kryptonite. You'll love it. Right away. So I'm super stoked to talk to Aaron next week.
Yep.
In the same way that we talked to Mitch today.
Yeah. And of course, if you're watching,
or
if you're watching this post live, pre-recorded, everyone is welcome to take part and ask questions. So next week will be Aaron Comis, and we'll be talking about Pocket Full of Kryptonite. So if you can keep your questions related to the album, that's kind of the purpose of liner notes, is to just kind of make a something that lives forever for the Gen Z and beyond to find out the history of the album, for anyone that cares, for those types of people like myself
and me. Big time.
And it's just historical facts and figures. I'm sure and the crazy thing is, if you talk to Brad or Ellen, you'd get like 1,000 more stories, right?
That's
because every artist that's part of that project is going to have their own take on it. So because we're attached to Drum Geek,
we're doing
talking from the drummer's perspective.
It's I always equate it that you can either eat the meal or you can kind of see how all the ingredients coming in, and if you just see like the chef in a back alley having a cigarette, like I'm like, I want to know how that guy got to work every day before he made my meal. I kind of want to know about that, right?
It's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Cool. Okay, well then let's close her up here. This is the part where I start playing some tunes, and you can, I guess you can take us out there, bud. Thanks, everybody.